I do want to get into the Stephon Marbury documentary before we get to our first guest. I watched it on Netflix throughout yesterday and today. It's about an hour and a half documentary. You get to know who Stephon Marbury is, what he was as a young kid, and what it took him or what it takes to be an NBA player and move from high school, from playing for Lincoln, being a high school superstar, all the way to college, going to Georgia Tech, and then going to having the opportunity to go and play in the NBA. And he was drafted by the Milwaukee Bucks, and then he was traded to the Timberwolves for Ray Allen. It's a great story, and I'll tell you this right now. When you think of Stephon Marbury, a lot of people think he was a bust. Stephon Marbury was a borderline Hall of Famer. Say whatever you want. Look at his numbers. Look at what he did in the NBA. Now, I'm not saying he's a Hall of Famer and he's not going to the Hall of Fame because they don't just let anybody into Hall of Fame. But if you look at his NBA numbers, Stephon Marbury averaged about 20 points a game, averaged about 6 assists a game, and averaged about 3 to 4 rebounds a game. If you look at the numbers and as a point guard, and I'm telling you, you compare him to Chris Paul, their numbers are very similar. Very similar. Now, Chris Paul has been in the league for a significant amount of time. I think Chris Paul has been in the league for about 15, 16 years. Stephon Marbury was only in the league for about 10. So if you look at the longevity, Stephon Marbury is not a Hall of Famer. But what he was in the NBA, he was a guy that had a tremendous amount of talent. He was a great point guard, had unbelievable ball handling skills. Michael Jordan said it best, he's almost impossible to guard. But the problem with Stephon Marbury wasn't the fact that he wasn't a humble player. It wasn't the fact that he wasn't a good player in the NBA. He got mixed up with the fact that he was the best player on his team everywhere he went. And that was the mistake for all those organizations. Nobody, like the New York Knicks, helped him put a team around him to win. The Nets never put a team around him to win. The only team that had a team around him to win was the Timberwolves. And the story, if you watch the documentary, I didn't even know why Stephon Marbury and what's his name again? Kevin Garnett were not friends at the end of the whole banter of why he was traded. And you heard the story. The whole saga is Kevin Garnett and Stephon Marbury were very good friends. They grew up together. They played high school ball against each other, and they played travel ball with each other. And when Kevin Garnett the year before was drafted as the number 1 pick by the Timberwolves, he reached out to Stephon Marbury, and he said that we have a chance to get you. And if Minnesota has the opportunity to move up and get you, I would love to play with you and really create a combination of a top point guard with a top big man in the league. The story comes out that it was really Kevin Garnett pushed Kevin McHale to make that move, to trade Ray Allen in a first-round draft pick. Ray Allen is a Hall of Famer, by the way. Stephon Marbury is not a Hall of Famer. And trade a first-round draft pick and Ray Allen for Stephon Marbury to bring him to the Timberwolves. And the story went that Kevin Garnett got the biggest contract in NBA history the year before Stephon Marbury was going to become a free agent. Kevin Garnett got a $126 million contract, which was the biggest contract in NBA history. And then the CBA changed the year after, where players were going to get less money for a contract because of the CBA change by David Stern. Stephon Marbury got a $70 million contract from the Minnesota Timberwolves, which is $50 million less than Kevin Garnett, when Stephon Marbury believed he was the best player on the team.
Very interesting over Kevin
He
Garnett.
was. Yeah. He was the best player.
It was 02 to 04, I would say. That was the stretch where he was the most dominant on that Timberwolves team as that dynamic guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's definitely interesting to say the least, and it just shows when you think about these players turning into coaches and GMs. And Kevin McHale is definitely one of those guys that great player, but not a great coach and not a great GM.
Well, you get to look at the background of Stephon Marbury in this documentary. You get to meet his family. He had 4 brothers and 2 sisters. He comes from a family of 7. And his father was all about leadership and poise and teaching his boys and his daughters respect and understanding that hard work pays off. His mother was more of a gentle soul, step back, lovey-dovey. His father was the stern person, and he was his everything. And you get to realize who Stephon Marbury is. You know, I don't know if anybody has seen the movie He Got Game. He Got Game was really about Stephon Marbury. Ray Allen, who was traded for Stephon Marbury in that draft, played and portrayed himself as Stephon Marbury. And Ray Allen spoke about Stephon Marbury in the movie. But Ray Allen was a part of the documentary, and he talks about Stephon Marbury because Stephon Marbury and Ray Allen are very good friends. And Stephon Marbury really didn't turn into being a fan favorite until he went to China. He played for the New Jersey Nets. He wasn't a fan favorite. He played for the New York Knicks. He wasn't a fan favorite. His long life dream was to play for the New York Knicks. He grew up a New York Knicks fan. He grew up in Coney Island Avenue. He grew up in Brooklyn. He had his opportunity because Isaiah Thomas decided to make a trade, a crazy trade, which traded away McDice and a bunch of draft picks to land Stephon Marbury. And Stephon Marbury, as good as he was as an NBA player, you take a step back and you look at all the numbers that he did as a player, as an NBA player. You're skeptical about, some people are skeptical to say that he was a Hall of Fame player. I am not, because Stephon Marbury in a 5-6 year span was the top 3, top 4 point guard in the NBA.
Is that enough for a Hall of Fame candidacy is a different question, though, especially with what happened with the Knicks later on, because, again...
Chauncey Billups, is he a Hall of Famer?
Is Chauncey Billups a Hall of Famer?
Is he a Hall of Famer?
Ooh, that's a tough question.
He probably is going to the Hall of Fame. Tell me who has had a better NBA career. Chauncey Billups. And don't bring up the championships, because Chauncey Billups played for a very good team.
Right.
He also played for Larry Brown that couldn't stand Stephon Marbury. And that was the whole... Everybody talks about that Olympic run that they had with Allen Iverson and Stephon Marbury, where they won a bronze. And that was the first time when an NBA team was built to play in the Olympics. They never won the gold medal. And everybody blamed, including Larry Brown, blamed Stephon Marbury for the fact that they didn't win and that they didn't win the gold. To put one player and blame one player for not winning a gold medal is pathetic. Absolute pathetic with all those NBA players, which, quote-unquote, LeBron James played for that team as well.
Right. That was his first year in the league, I think, or his second year in the league, and he was a young player, young star, and that made an impact on it. And
there were a bunch of players on that team. Right. Kevin Garnett was on that team. Dwight Howard was on that team. There were a lot of good players on that team.
Mm-hmm. And for any American team as loaded as they are to lose like that, the way they did in
But it was Stephon Marbury's fault.
Right.
Larry Brown played Stephon Marbury. And then Larry Brown, 2 years, 3 years later, or 4 years later, when he was traded to the New York Knicks, a year after he was traded to the New York Knicks, who does Isaiah Thomas bring to the team, which made absolutely no sense? Larry Brown.
Yep.
And how quick did that last? What was it, a year and a half, 2 years? Larry Brown completely stepped down. Stephon Marbury was practically traded away and got the Knicks. Or no, the Knicks didn't trade him. They bought him out. They bought him out. Stephon Marbury, you say whatever you want about the guy. Talent, unbelievable talent. When everybody talks about Allen Iverson, who, when you look at that draft, you had Allen Iverson, Stephon Marbury, Kobe Bryant, Ray Allen. Go look at that draft. Hall of Famers from up and down the list. That was one of the best drafts in NBA history. You're talking about probably around 7 or 8 Hall of Famers in that draft.
Wow.
It was a great draft. It just, unfortunately, when you look at Stephon Marbury, you're not going to remember Stephon Marbury as the superstar player that everybody thought he was going to be in the NBA. You would think of him as a great player. A great player at the time of his career, 5-year span, 6-year span. He was a top 5, top 4 point guard in the NBA.
Mm-hmm. And again, it's just the question is always with basketball is the longevity, because a lot of players do blossom when they're younger too, and then they'll fall out, or the other way around where they're raw, they don't get it going, and yet they're drafted as a teenager. Some of them are great right away, and then some of them aren't. And Marbury was one of those early bloomers for sure. The question is, did he have the longevity? You're right, though. I think it is closer than people expect, though, for when judging those 5-6 years.
I judge Stephon Marbury not for the teams that he played for or how bad the teams were that he got traded to. Go look at the Suns. Who did he play with the Phoenix Suns? Who did he play with?
When did he play with the Suns? That was early in his career?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, you're right. That team wasn't great either.
Who did he play with?
Charles Barkley left at that time.
He didn't play with Charles Barkley. He didn't play with Johnson. He played with Amari Stoudemire, but Amari Stoudemire was not 100%. He was never 100% healthy. When Stephon Marbury played, he was practically the only player on that team.
Steve Nash wasn't there yet either.
No.
Right? Okay, yeah, so that's really it.
That wasn't a good team. Everywhere Stephon Marbury was traded to or he went to, they were all rebuilding teams. Phoenix, rebuilding team. The Knicks, rebuilding team. The Nets, rebuilding team. The only team that wasn't, well, they were a rebuilding team, the Timberwolves.
Yeah, they were kind of that new,
growing young team.
Right. Mm-hmm. And then again, Garnett was the only player they had. They had, the other guard was okay, but he wasn't a superstar. That was really it, too. And that was a young expansion team that had to get it going.
Well, again, when I look at Stephon Marbury, and I'm telling you, I see Jeff writing stupid things that the Knicks are trash. Yes, they're trash. Good for you, Jeff, like nobody knows. This is not about the New York Knicks. This is about the documentary on Netflix about Stephon Marbury. It was a great, very well brought to everybody's attention documentary on Netflix. I loved it. And I'm going to tell you guys, if you have the chance to watch it in the next couple of days or in the next couple of weeks, pop it on. It's a great, great documentary. And it gives you the insight of when his father died, when he was playing in an NBA game, where his sister said told the Knicks not to tell Steph about his father being rushed to the hospital because his father always went to the hospital because he had diabetes problems. And then he never came home. He died before before the game ended when he played for the Knicks. And he found out after the game that his father passed away. Ever since then, Stephon Marbury was not the same player. His career completely went downhill, not only with the New York Knicks and the New York Knicks fans. It went down for him where he decided he was talking about a nervous breakdown.
Wow.
Talking about possibly suicidal.
Wow. Really?
And then it was probably the best thing that ever happened to him. The Knicks bought him out. And he decided he didn't want to play in the NBA anymore. And he was looking overseas. And he went to China. And he got to learn the Chinese culture. Won a couple of titles over there in Beijing.
He's a legend there.
Became a superstar. Something where they still worship him. They have a statue of him in front of the Beijing stadium.
I believe it.
He became a god over there. Made millions and millions of dollars. He is now a spokesman for China. He is everything that he should have been over here, over there. And you want to know something? When you look at Stephon Marbury, I have no hard feelings on him as a player. Even when he was a New York Knick, I thought it was a bad move by the New York Knicks. I thought it was a bad move by Isaiah Thomas because he didn't fit the culture of what the Knicks were trying to build at the time they were trying to build it. Then they bring in Larry Brown, which made absolutely no sense. And bringing him in as a coach, knowing that Stephon Marbury and him never got along. And you heard Chauncey Billups, and who Chauncey Billups grew up with Stephon Marbury. They played travel ball together. And he said that nobody could stand Larry Brown, and it took a while for him to stand Larry Brown, and he didn't understand why Larry Brown was brought to the Knicks when Stephon Marbury was there. He also said that Allen Iverson had his ups and his downs with Stephon Marbury. With Larry Brown. And it took him a little while to get to know Larry Brown and fall in love with Larry Brown on the way he taught the game and the way he taught basketball. So it's a great documentary. And if you guys haven't checked it out on Netflix, check it out. Stephon Marbury is one of the most underrated NBA players in a 10-year span that nobody gives credit to because he never played on good teams. He really never did.